So what is Buddhism? Most of you will know it as a religion. Among the many religions that we have, Buddhism is quite popular. It is well known throughout the world. And most of you will also know that the founder of Buddhism is the Gautama Buddha, who lived among us 2,500 years ago. At 8 years of age, he passed away, and over a period of 45 years, he roamed the earth, sharing with humanity what he discovered. And this is today what we have accepted and what we learn and study as Buddhist philosophy. Now, of course, over the years, as with anything, things can change. And things may have changed. However, there are scriptures which are available to us, which we study, and also when we learn and practice Buddhist philosophy, things seem to become obvious. And personally, for me at least, this is my ideal way of working out what I believe is the Buddhist philosophy that works for me, and some of the other practices, virtues, observances, which may be customary, but maybe not so much things that I personally have all that interest in myself. So what is Buddhist philosophy? And why Buddhist philosophy? Let me put it this way. I believe that all of us, all human beings, all men, women, and children, go through life looking for one thing in common. We seem to be going about it, doing all sorts of different things. However, we're all after one purpose. Right from when you wake up in the morning to all the things that you do throughout the day, and as you finish at the end of the day. If you take into account all of the things that you have done and ask yourself one question: why did I do them? What did I expect as an outcome from all of these activities? I believe you will agree with me that they have one thing in common, and that all of these things were done to achieve fulfillment, happiness, satisfaction, to achieve that feeling that you have lived the day to your fullest, and that life throughout the day that you have lived it has been fulfilling. So really, we go through life looking for happiness. I doubt that there is anything in life that anyone does, and I feel and I believe you will agree with me, that anyone does to achieve anything other than happiness. It may be that there are some things that you do to fulfill your duties, responsibilities, and even they give you a sense of satisfaction. that you have fulfilled your duties and responsibilities. But the vast majority of things that we do in our lives are to achieve happiness for ourselves. Whether it is the places that we go to, the food that we eat, the things that we do, we sing, we dance, we spend time with our families and friends. We visit places, we go sightseeing, we go on holiday. We engage ourselves in various activities. We work and we play. We earn money. We build homes. We buy cars. We fly rockets. We explore. We go on adventures. We try out different things. Of course, the list goes on and on. Numerous things we do as a race, a human race, and numerous things we pick up along the way. It would be fair to say that we do far more things today in terms of variety than perhaps we used to a few thousand years ago. So as humanity evolves, as the human species evolves, what we realize is that people try out different things and they keep trying out various different things. But if you were to ask the question, what is the one thing that people look for in all these ventures, in every new enterprise? The answer always is the same. And that is, everything we do because we look for fulfillment in life. Something that makes us feel that we have achieved something. Something that satisfies us. Something that makes us happy. And I believe that the reason that we are interested in religion, whether that is Buddhism, Islam, Christianity, Hinduism, or any other religion for that matter, is because we seek fulfillment, satisfaction, and happiness by our adherence to the teachings in those religions. And we feel that we have achieved something in our lives by being part of something greater than us. So, why Buddhism? I would say, to put it quite simply, for the very reason why you do anything else. The very reason why you do anything and everything else. If you do it intently or intentionally, you must do it because it makes you happy, it satisfies you, it helps you achieve fulfillment. So why Buddhism, I'd say, is for the same reason. There are Buddhists who are not all that interested in Buddhism. And that may be because they don't believe that it helps them to achieve a sense of fulfillment and satisfaction. And that may be because they don't fully understand what Buddhism offers them. So, our intention, our purpose with these talks is to introduce to you Buddhist philosophy rather than Buddhism as a religion, but Buddhist philosophy to make available to you options. It's always nice to have options, isn't it? Whenever we want to do something, it's always good to have options. Whether that is going to a restaurant, you like to have some options. If it's a question of what you'd like to be doing this weekend, well, you'd always like to have some options. Because options give us the feeling that we are in control. We have choice. And making the right choice to help us achieve fulfillment and satisfaction, that is something that matters a lot to us. So, what I don't intend through these talks is to idealize Buddhism, to make you feel that this is something that you have to do, to make you feel that there are strict practices that you have to observe and adhere to. Quite the contrary is the truth. Buddhism is about liberation, is about giving you the choice to do whatever you like. But it is about explaining to you the consequences of those choices and then leaving you free will to decide what you'd like to do. Some of the preconceptions that people may have about Buddhism is that if you practice Buddhism, then there are lots of things that you have to do. Like, for instance, become a vegetarian, or perhaps offer flowers to a statue, or maybe go to the temple, worship, or maybe change the way you dress. Now, these things are customary. They're not mandatory. And that is why my intention is to leave out as much of those things as possible and to try and focus on what Buddhist philosophy is, so that you are able to listen, think for yourself, analyze your options, and then from there on, it's up to you whatever you decide to do. I am a monk. Most of you will be familiar with what you see on screen today. This is a life that I have chosen to live. No one has forced me to become a monk. No one has forced me to dress the way I do, in a robe. No one has forced me to shave my head. These are all conscious choices. Choices that I have made for the same reason that I have decided to understand and live Buddhist philosophy. It is the same reason why, as I said earlier, we do anything and everything in life for the purpose of happiness. Eventually, I'll help make sense of all these things to you. So, the only thing that I ask of you is to continue to remain with us and remain curious, and of course also open-minded. At no point will I ask you to believe in something that you cannot believe without giving you evidence to the same. I will not ask you to engage in various rituals or activities or practices. Don't worry, I will not ask you to shave your heads. I will not ask you to become a monk or even come and visit us to the monastery. All of that is up to you. That is your choice. This is all about choices. This is all about freedom. Freedom of choice. I believe that every man, woman and child, every human being has a duty unto themselves to learn about all of the options that are available to them as they go through life and to achieve happiness, satisfaction, and fulfillment. It is a duty that we all have to ourselves, so that when we have lived and gone through life, we can look back at our lives and say, that was a life well lived, a full life. It would be a real shame, don't you think, that at the end of our lives, if we were to look back and then feel that perhaps there was just one more thing that I could have done, one more stone that I could have turned, and I could have been happier. I wouldn't want that for any of you, as I didn't want that for myself either. I have been a monk for just over 4 years, and before that I lived a lay life, like most of you. And in my lay life, also, the one thing that I wanted was happiness. And to achieve that, I have done almost everything, almost all of the things that I mentioned above, the things that people do to be happy. Going places, earning money, doing a good job, having a family, trying out different things, adventure, all sorts. And then, when I was introduced to Buddhist philosophy, I realized this is what I have been missing all my life. And so I made a conscious choice to learn more, to study more about Buddhist philosophy, and then eventually, one fine day I decided that this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And so here we are. That day may or may not come for you. And as I said earlier, it is not my intention to force you down any pathway in life. I have no intention of doing that whatsoever. All I have intended to do as part of these talks is to make you aware of options, choices. Because something that I do know, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, is, as I've said earlier, all things that we do in life, we do with one purpose, and that one purpose is to achieve happiness. So, why Buddhism? Is for that reason. Why should you listen to these talks? It is for that reason. It is for the same reason that if a new restaurant were to open in the town, you'd probably go and try it out. Because you want to see what other options you have. If a new fashion store were to open in town, you'd probably go and at least window shop to see what they have to offer. Most weekends, you'll probably be looking for an opportunity, for an escape, to go somewhere nice, somewhere interesting, perhaps to go on holiday. And then you go on a website and find out some of the good places, some places that you can go on holiday, all for the purpose of achieving happiness, satisfaction, and fulfillment. So trying out something new for the purpose of achieving fulfillment and satisfaction is nothing new to you. It is something we all do regularly and almost on a daily basis. If ever there is something new, we always try and see if there is something that will make us happier than we already are. And so therefore, for the same reason, I would like to introduce to you Buddhist philosophy, as I believe that this is a really strong option that you should all be aware of. every human being should be aware of as they make their choices as to what makes them happy. So that is why Buddhist philosophy, and that is why these talks. So what is Buddhist philosophy then? Most of you, when you think about Buddhism, and also think back to some of the things you already know about Buddhism, will, I'm sure, have heard that Buddhism deals a great amount with suffering. Doesn't the Buddha talk about suffering? Some people even think that all he's talked about is suffering and nothing else. So it may be that some people are prejudiced in their decisions, in their choices, and they don't feel they feel reluctant to even consider or listen to a Buddhist talk from there on, because they feel that if it is happiness that I seek in my life, why should I listen to a principle, a set of principles, or even a philosophy that deals wholly with suffering? And that's a very valid question. You see, the Buddha did talk about suffering. He did. But what's really interesting is what he talked about immediately afterwards. He talked about suffering. He then went on to talk about the cause of suffering. He then said, if you eradicate the cause of suffering, then suffering will be permanently eradicated. And then he showed us the path to eradicating the cause of suffering. So it is not like he said, it's all suffering, it's all doom and gloom. Quite the opposite. He talked about suffering, and then he talked about how we can work to end suffering. So for someone to believe that Buddhism is all about suffering, I'm not sure that is true, because that is only 1/4 of it. What's really interesting is what he talked about suffering and how he explained to us that suffering can be brought to an end. It may be that most people are not aware of that. And that's okay, because that is what these talks are for. Now, if we are interested in happiness, should we also be interested in a philosophy that talks about suffering? Surely they're the opposite of each other. Well, as much as we'd like to be happy, there are of course things in life that make us unhappy, aren't there? Things that steal our happiness. The normal vicissitudes of life. As we go through life, it has its ups and downs, and I think it would be unfair to say that all we experience in life is happiness. Both you and I know fully well that in life we have to face both happiness and unhappiness. There are things that make us happy and there are things that make us unhappy. What if you could completely get rid of the things that make you unhappy? Or rather, what if unhappiness can be completely removed from your life? Wouldn't that be ideal? Let's not jump in too soon into conclusions as to whether it is possible or not. But hypothetically, if that were possible, and if that was an option, would you not consider it? What if there was nothing in this world that could make you unhappy? Think about this. Right now, I'm sure you'll agree that there are lots of things that can make you unhappy. So, for instance, think about all the things that make you happy. Your family, your children, your work, your status, and even material things like food. If you like going to the movies, games, playing sport, trying out different things, adventure. These are things that make you happy. These are things that make most people happy. And even things like love, emotions, feeling cared for, are things that make you happy. Well, that's all good and well, but just as much as they make you happy, they also have the potential to make you unhappy, don't they? Because you see, anything that makes you happy, if and when taken away from you, usually forcibly, so against your will, now what does that do to you? Well, then it makes you unhappy. And that would be true for all of the examples that I mentioned earlier. Anything that makes you happy, if and when taken away from you, against your will, that makes you unhappy. Then there are other things that make you unhappy as a given, and therefore you keep away from them as much as you possibly can. Things that you try and avoid. So, just as much as you like to be among friends, you like to be away from those people who you consider not so friendly. Those people who you don't like very much. There may be some items of food that you don't like to eat. Eating them, their taste or even their smell might make you unhappy. There'll be some things that you don't like to do. For instance, homework for young people. These are things that make you unhappy. So therefore, what people try and do is avoid them as best they can. But does it always work? Your efforts to try and avoid them? Does that always work? Well, you know the answer. As much as you try to keep them at bay, from time to time, life has a way of bringing these things back to you. People that you don't like, you just keep bumping into them. Things that you don't like, you just happen to do them. You just happen to have to do them from time to time, and you just can't avoid them. Places where you don't want to be, sometimes you just have to be. Things you don't want to do, sometimes you just have to do. Things you don't want to see, sometimes you just have to see. Things you don't want to listen to, things you don't want to hear, sometimes you just have to hear them. So, as much as you try and avoid them, these things are not always in your control. So you see, when you don't have everything under your control, things that you like can be taken away from you, and things that you don't like can be brought to you. And that can take away your happiness. Loved ones pass away. That is inevitable. Think for a moment about the people you live with today, your family. This could be your mother, your father, your children, your husband or wife, your siblings, your friends. You know for a fact that eventually they're going to say goodbye for good, one by one. Either they're all going to say goodbye one by one, or you're going to say goodbye to them all at once. One of these two things will inevitably happen. And even if one may argue, well, if I am the first to go, then that grief is only short-lived. Well, what if the other happens? As in, you hang around, but other people, your loved ones in your life, they pass away from time to time. Well, then you can't stop, you can't help yourself from feeling unhappy, from feeling sad and disappointed. So you see, as much as you try to live a life fulfilled, to live a life of happiness and contentment, there are always things that come and take that away from you. And of course, we always try to make our minds up, to be strong in these times, in difficult times, to be courageous. The fact that you have to be like that, I see, is a problem. The fact that you have to make your mind up to be happy, the fact that you have to strive to be courageous in the face of these vicissitudes, I see is a problem. Because it would be ideal, wouldn't it, that if you didn't have to be like that? That if nothing could take away your happiness, and you could be happy regardless of what happens around you? Now,